The abduction. The night sky over Earth was clear, the stars shining brightly as the human ship cruised silently through space. Captain Alex Carter stood at the command station of the Horizon, a deep space exploration vessel. His eyes focused on the vastness of the cosmos, his mind racing with thoughts of the mission ahead. Little did he know, this was a moment that would change everything for humanity. It had been a routine mission so far, scanning distant star systems, collecting data on unknown planets. The crew of the Horizon was relaxed, taking turns for rest and conducting their duties. But something felt wrong. A faint signal had appeared on the ship's sensors, an unknown frequency. At first, Captain Carter dismissed it as interference, but the signal kept repeating. Lieutenant Foster, Carter called over to the officer working at the communications console. "Can you trace that signal?" Foster adjusted her headset, her eyes glued to the screens. "I'm trying, Captain, but it's not coming from any known source. It's too strong. I can't pinpoint its origin." "How strong is it?" Carter asked, now feeling a sense of unease creeping into his chest. Foster began, but she was interrupted by a sudden alarm. The entire ship shook violently, knocking several crew members off their feet. The lights flickered, and a deep humming sound filled the air. "What's happening?" Carter shouted, trying to steady himself. A moment later, the ship was pulled into an unseen force. The view from the windows turned into a blur of stars, and the horizon seemed to move against its will, as if caught in a powerful grip. "Captain," yelled Lieutenant Foster, her voice trembling. "We're being pulled into something. I don't know what it is. The engines are offline." Carter's mind raced as he tried to understand what was happening. There was no visible object around them, no enemy ships on their radar. Yet the ship was being dragged deeper into the unknown. Panic set in as the crew scrambled to stay in control. The vibrations from the ship's hull grew stronger, and then, as quickly as it had started, everything stopped. The ship was now in total silence. The crew stared at the control screens, but the readings made no sense. They were no longer in familiar space, but in some unknown region of the galaxy. "Lieutenant, do we have any communication with Earth?" Carter asked, his voice firm despite the tension that gripped him. Foster shook her head. "The communication systems are completely jammed. I can't get through." The captain felt a cold chill run down his spine. They were stranded, somewhere no human had ever been before. But before he could process it further, another alarm blared. This time, a warning of an incoming object. "Brace for impact," Carter shouted, barely able to hear himself over the blaring sirens. Suddenly, the ship was hit with a tremendous force, sending everyone flying across the deck. The sound of metal screeching filled the air as the ship's hull groaned under the pressure. For a moment, everything went black. When Carter came to, he was disoriented and lying on the cold floor of the command room. His head throbbed, and his vision was blurry. He forced himself to stand, his body aching from the crash. The crew members were slowly getting to their feet, just as confused as he was. "Report," Carter barked, shaking off the dizziness. We've been boarded," said Lieutenant Foster, her face pale. "Captain, there are beings on the ship." The crew stared at her in shock. "What do you mean, beings?" Carter asked, his voice shaking. "I don't know," Foster said, her voice trembling. "They're not human. They're different, and they're everywhere. We can hear them moving through the halls." Before Carter could respond, a strange noise echoed through the ship, a soft hum, almost like an engine, but it was far too smooth and too controlled. The sound seemed to be coming from all around them, vibrating through the walls. "They've locked down the lower decks," another crew member, Ensign Jensen, said, his face filled with fear. "We can't get to the escape pods." Captain Carter's mind was racing. He needed to think fast. He turned to his crew, his voice firm despite the fear threatening to take hold of him. "We don't know who or what's doing this, but we have to stay calm. Stay together, and don't engage unless you have to. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the hallway outside, followed by strange whispers that seemed to fill the ship. The air grew colder, and the crew members exchanged fearful glances. "Stay sharp," Carter whispered, drawing his blaster from his holster. "Whatever these beings are, they're not here for peace." Suddenly, the door to the command room burst open, and several tall, dark figures stepped into view. Their skin was a deep, glossy black, and their eyes glowed with an unnatural red hue. They moved with a terrifying speed, their presence overwhelming. Carter's heart raced. These beings weren't like anything he had ever seen. Their technology was far beyond human understanding, and they had somehow disabled the horizon with ease. As they advanced, Carter and his crew prepared for what they knew was an inevitable confrontation. The aliens had come, and they were not playing games. This opening sets up the story with tension and builds suspense, drawing the audience in right from the start. Let me know if you'd like to add or change anything. You said, the test begins. The crew of the Horizon was on edge. They had never experienced anything like this. The ship was silent now, but the eerie feeling of being trapped was overwhelming. Captain Carter stood at the command station, his grip tightening around the control panel as he stared at the monitors. The alien invaders were still aboard, and no one knew what they wanted. But Carter was certain of one thing: they weren't here for a peaceful visit. "They've disabled the communications, Captain," Foster said, her voice shaking as she glanced up from her console. "We can't send a distress signal. We're completely cut off from Earth." Carter nodded grimly. "We have to assume we're on our own. We don't know how many of them are here or what they're capable of. Keep your eyes open, everyone." Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered, casting long shadows across the walls of the command room. The crew tensed, looking around nervously. A low humming sound, almost like a vibration, reverberated through the walls. It grew louder, echoing through the ship like an ominous warning. "Everyone, stay alert," Carter barked. But before he could say anything else, the door to the command room swung open with a mechanical hiss. A tall alien figure stepped into the room. Its body was sleek and unnaturally smooth, and its eyes glowed a deep blood red. The creature didn't speak, but it pointed toward the crew, its elongated fingers making a slow, deliberate motion. Then, without a word, it turned and walked out of the room, its steps silent, almost too quiet. Carter's eyes narrowed. Something was wrong. "Did anyone understand what just happened?" he asked, his voice low. "I don't know, sir," Lieutenant Foster replied, "but I think they want us to follow them." The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but they had no choice. Whatever the aliens wanted, they would have to play along for now. Carter gave a sharp nod. "All right, everyone stay together. Keep your weapons ready, but don't fire unless you have to." They moved cautiously, walking down the narrow corridors of the ship. The alien figure led them without a word, and they followed, unsure of what awaited them. The ship felt cold and lifeless, as if it was empty except for the intruders. After several minutes, they reached a large open chamber. The walls were lined with strange alien technology. Unfamiliar symbols blinked on the monitors, and glowing panels illuminated the room. In the center of the room, several more aliens stood, waiting. They had the same glowing eyes and sleek bodies, but these ones were taller, with an air of authority around them. Carter's heart pounded in his chest. These were the leaders, but what did they want with his crew? The alien in the front stepped forward, its eyes locking with Carter's. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of sharp, glistening teeth. But instead of speaking, it pointed to the center of the room where a large holographic display was projecting a map of the galaxy. Carter stepped forward, trying to keep his fear in check. "What is this?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tension. "What do you want with us?" The alien leader didn't respond. Instead, it motioned to one of the crew members, Ensign Jensen, and gestured for him to step forward. Jensen hesitated but stepped toward the center of the room. He was immediately surrounded by the aliens, who seemed to study him closely. A low, almost mechanical hum filled the air as the leader pointed at Jensen's head. The others followed suit, their eyes glowing brighter as they focused on him. "What are they doing?" Foster whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Carter watched closely, his mind racing. "I think they're scanning him." The tension in the room was palpable. Jensen stood frozen in place, unable to move. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the aliens continued their strange ritual. The air around them grew heavier, and Carter could feel the weight of the situation closing in. Then, with a sudden flash of light, Jensen collapsed to the floor. "Ensign!" Foster cried, rushing to his side. The aliens stepped back, and the leader made a motion with its hand. One of the other aliens approached Jensen, kneeling beside him. They placed their hands on his head, and after a few tense moments, Jensen's eyes slowly opened. His breathing was shallow, but he was alive. "Whoa, what did they do to me?" Jensen whispered, his voice weak. I saw things. Strange things." Carter knelt beside him, his mind racing. "Stay with me, Jensen. What did you see?" Jensen's eyes flickered as he tried to focus. "It was a vision. I saw galaxies, stars exploding. The aliens were everywhere. They were watching us. But they weren't just watching. They were studying us. They know we're different. They know we're not like the other species they've encountered." Carter's mind went into overdrive. These aliens weren't just here to play games. They were studying humanity. They were looking for something they believed humans possessed. And Carter wasn't sure if they were prepared for what they might find. The leader of the aliens raised a hand, and the room fell into silence. It pointed directly at Carter. His heart skipped a beat. The message was clear. They weren't done with their test yet. The crew had been brought here for a reason, and they were about to find out exactly what that reason was. "Stay sharp," Carter muttered under his breath. "We're not leaving here until we know what they want. And I promise you, we're not going down without a fight." The tension in the room was unbearable, but Carter knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. This second part builds on the suspense, showing the aliens' power and intentions, while keeping the humans in a dangerous, uncertain position. The hook and progression continue to keep the audience engaged. Let me know if you want any revisions. The human test. The air inside the alien ship felt thick with tension. Captain Carter and his crew had been in the presence of the aliens for hours, yet no one knew what their next move would be. After Jensen's strange vision, the crew was more on edge than ever. The aliens had been silent for too long, watching them with their glowing red eyes. It was almost as if they were waiting for something that the humans still didn't understand. Carter paced the command room, glancing occasionally at the monitors. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of the situation. His crew was shaken, but they had been through tough situations before. The key was to remain calm and think logically. But this was different. The aliens weren't just another enemy to defeat. They were something much more mysterious. "Foster, any progress on communications?" Carter asked, his voice steady despite the mounting uncertainty. Foster shook her head. "No, Captain. They've blocked every signal. We can't reach Earth or anyone else. It's like we're completely isolated." Carter clenched his fists, frustration building inside him. "We can't just sit here and wait. We need to know what they want, and why they're here. There's got to be more to this than just an attack." As if on cue, the door to the command room opened with a sharp hiss. One of the aliens entered, its tall figure towering over the humans. The room fell silent as everyone turned to face the intruder. This one was different, though. Unlike the others, it wore a dark, flowing robe that covered most of its body. The robe shimmered with strange symbols that seemed to shift as the alien moved. It didn't speak, but its presence was commanding. It pointed to the holographic map on the wall, where the crew's ship was still displayed. The alien tapped the map, and the image zoomed in on Earth. Carter's heart raced as he watched the alien's finger hover over their home planet. "We're not just here for a casual visit, are we?" Carter asked, his voice cold but firm. The alien tilted its head, as if considering the question. Then, finally, it spoke. The voice was like a low, echoing hum, almost like a vibration in the air. "Humanity," it said, its voice sharp and alien, "is different. We've studied countless species across the galaxy, but none like you. Your potential, it's extraordinary. We've come to test you, to see if you are worthy of standing among the stars." Carter's eyes narrowed. "Test us. You brought us here for a test." The alien nodded, the expression on its face unreadable. "Yes, the test will determine your place in the galaxy. If you pass, you will be allowed to join the others. If you fail," it didn't finish the sentence, but the meaning was clear. There was no second chance. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, their minds racing. They had heard stories of powerful alien species, but never had they imagined they would face one so ancient and advanced. And now, they were caught in a deadly game, their future uncertain. The alien leader pointed to Jensen, who had been recovering in the corner of the room. Jensen's face was pale, and he seemed to be struggling to keep his composure. His eyes flickered nervously as the alien's gaze fell upon him. "Ensign," the alien said, "you have already been tested. Your mind is different. But now, we test your body." Jensen looked up, confusion and fear written across his face. What do you mean?" Before anyone could react, the alien extended its hand, and a strange, glowing energy field surrounded Jensen. It was like a shield of light, pulsing with a soft, otherworldly hum. Jensen tried to move, but the energy field held him in place, his limbs frozen. The crew watched in horror as Jensen's body began to convulse. His muscles tensed, his face contorting in pain. Foster rushed forward, but Carter grabbed her arm, holding her back. "Wait," Carter ordered, his voice steady but full of dread. "We don't know what they're doing to him." Jensen's body jerked violently, his breath coming in short, labored gasps. The alien leader watched calmly, its glowing eyes never leaving the ensign. Carter's mind raced. What was this test? And why was Jensen the one chosen? He had to do something, anything, to stop this. "Stop," Carter shouted, his voice cracking with urgency. "Leave him alone. He's not your test subject." The alien leader didn't respond, but the energy field surrounding Jensen intensified. It flickered brightly, the light growing stronger with each passing second. Jensen's eyes began to roll back in his head as the pain seemed to reach unbearable levels. But just as Carter was about to make a move, the alien leader raised its hand, halting the energy field. Jensen collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. The alien stepped back, its gaze still locked on Carter. "The test is complete," it said simply. "The results are unexpected." Carter's heart raced as he knelt beside Jensen. "What do you mean, unexpected?" he demanded. The alien leader gave a slight, almost imperceptible smile. "Your species has much more power than we anticipated. This test is not finished yet. We will see if you can withstand the trials ahead." Carter's mind was spinning. The aliens had only just begun. They had no idea what humanity was capable of. And soon, they would learn the hard way. "We'll pass your test," Carter said, his voice low and filled with determination. "But you won't like the results." The alien leader regarded him silently for a long moment. Then, with a flick of its hand, it turned and left the room, leaving Carter and his crew in stunned silence. The crew had been tested, but now it was time for them to turn the tables. The aliens had no idea what they were up against, and Carter swore they would find out soon enough. The hidden strength. The cold, sterile walls of the alien ship seemed to close in on Captain Carter and his crew. The entire room was filled with an unsettling silence, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engines. Everyone was processing the events of the last few hours. Jensen's near-death experience, the alien leader's cryptic words, and the strange test they had just witnessed. The weight of their situation was becoming unbearable. Carter paced back and forth in the command center, his mind racing. He had seen his crew face down hostile enemies before, but this was different. The aliens, whatever they were, had something far beyond human technology. Yet they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, its determination to survive, and its capacity for strength when pushed to the edge. "Captain," Foster's voice broke the silence, bringing him back to the present. She stood at the comm station, her eyes fixed on the monitor. "We've been trying to get a signal to Earth, but every attempt is blocked. It's like they're intentionally isolating us." Carter frowned. "We already knew that, but there's got to be a way out of this. We can't sit here forever waiting for them to decide our fate." Foster nodded, her expression tense. "There is something else, though. While we've been trying to send a message, I've noticed unusual readings from the ship's core. It's almost like they're hiding something." "Hiding something?" Carter repeated, his curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" "There's an energy source," Foster explained, pointing to the screen. "It doesn't match any known readings in our database. It's not part of the ship's primary systems. I think it's hidden somewhere on the ship." Carter's heart raced. This was it. This could be their way out, their chance to fight back. He turned to his crew. "All right, we need to find that energy source. It could give us the upper hand. Whatever the aliens are hiding, it's time we found out." The crew nodded in unison, their faces determined. The stakes had never been higher. They moved swiftly through the ship's narrow corridors, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The ship seemed almost abandoned, with no signs of life except for the strange alien presence watching them from the shadows. It was as though the entire vessel was alive, but watching them with a cold, distant intelligence. Jensen, still recovering from the alien's test, had joined the group, though his body was weak. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and every time he glanced over his shoulder, it felt as if the walls themselves were listening. His mind was clouded by the lingering effects of the alien energy, but he knew that whatever they were about to face, they needed to be ready. "Captain," Jensen said, his voice hoarse. I don't know if I can keep up. My head's still spinning from whatever they did to me." Carter looked at him, his eyes full of understanding. "You're doing fine, Jensen. Just stay close. We need everyone in top form for what's coming." They reached a narrow door at the end of a long hallway. Foster scanned the control panel, and after a few moments, the door hissed open. Beyond it lay a darkened chamber, filled with unfamiliar machinery. The air inside was thick with a strange metallic scent, and the walls pulsed with an eerie blue light. "Is this it?" Carter asked, his voice low. Foster stepped forward cautiously, her eyes scanning the room. "It's hard to say, but if the energy readings are right, this should be the source." They approached the center of the room, where a large, spherical object hovered in midair, suspended by some unseen force. The object glowed with a dim, pulsating light, and as they drew closer, Carter could feel a strange vibration in the air, as if the ship itself was alive. "This is it," Foster whispered. "It's not just an energy source, it's a weapon." Before Carter could respond, a sharp voice rang out from behind them. "You should not have come here." They spun around to see an alien figure standing in the doorway. Its face was obscured by a dark hood, but its glowing eyes pierced through the darkness. It was one of the high-ranking aliens, the one who had led the earlier test on Jensen. "Why are you hiding this?" Carter demanded, stepping forward. "What is it? Why are you keeping this weapon from us?" The alien's lips curled into a smirk. "You still don't understand, do you? This weapon is not for you. It was never meant for you. It is our greatest creation, our greatest tool, and you are not worthy to wield it." The tension in the room grew thick as the alien's words sank in. The weapon, whatever it was, wasn't just a tool for destruction. It was something far more powerful. And now, the humans had discovered it. The alien leader had underestimated them once again. "We don't need your permission," Carter said, his voice cold with fury. "We will fight back, and you'll regret ever thinking we were weak." The alien's eyes flashed, and with a flick of its hand, the room's atmosphere changed. The walls seemed to close in, the air grew colder, and the faint hum of the ship became a low, ominous growl. It was clear that the battle for survival was just beginning. Carter knew that the fight was far from over. They had found the weapon, but now they had to figure out how to use it against their captors. And as the alien's cold eyes bore into him, he knew one thing for certain. This would be a battle unlike any they had ever faced before. The awakening of power. The tension in the chamber was almost unbearable. Captain Carter stood frozen, his gaze locked with the alien's glowing eyes. The silence was thick, interrupted only by the hum of the mysterious weapon in the center of the room. For a moment, it felt as though time had stopped. Everyone was waiting, expecting the first move to come from either the alien or themselves. Foster, standing beside Carter, felt a surge of nervous energy. She could sense the dangerous potential of the weapon in front of them, and the uncertainty of what would happen next gnawed at her every nerve. Jensen, though still weak, was steady, gripping his weapon tightly, his body instinctively preparing for what might come. The alien leader spoke again, his voice cold and deliberate. "You believe you can defeat us, don't you? But you don't understand what you're up against. You are nothing compared to the power we command." Carter's hands tightened into fists. His thoughts raced. This alien leader was trying to provoke them, trying to break their spirit. But Carter wouldn't back down. He couldn't. "We'll see about that," Carter said, his voice steady despite the pressure mounting around him. "I've seen my crew do impossible things before. We won't be intimidated." The alien smirked, clearly unfazed by Carter's words. "You can try," it said, "but we've already won. You're in our ship, in our domain. You have no chance." Before Carter could respond, the alien raised its hand, and the chamber around them seemed to shift. The once still air grew heavy, a sense of impending doom creeping into every corner. The walls seemed to close in, the dim blue light from the weapon flickering, as if reacting to the alien's presence. In that moment, something inside Carter shifted. He realized the alien was right in one regard. This ship, this technology, was beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. But it didn't matter. The humans had something that the aliens couldn't fathom: determination. They had faced impossible odds before, and they had always come through. Foster whispered, almost to herself, "Captain, we can't just stand here and let them take control. We need to take that weapon." Carter nodded, his jaw tightening. "Get ready." The alien leader's hand moved again, and the ship's hum grew louder, almost deafening. In that instant, Carter didn't hesitate. He signaled for Foster to move forward while he covered her. She sprinted towards the weapon, her heart pounding in her chest. Jensen followed closely behind, his hands shaking, but his resolve unbroken. As they neared the weapon, the alien leader raised his hand one more time, and the entire room seemed to vibrate. A shockwave of energy surged through the air, knocking everyone off their feet. Carter was sent crashing into the floor, but he quickly scrambled to get up, his focus still on the glowing sphere in the center of the room. It was their only chance. "Do you think this will stop me?" The alien leader's voice echoed as the room's temperature dropped dramatically. His power was immense, but it was clear the aliens were now underestimating the humans' will to survive. Carter staggered to his feet, sweat dripping down his face. "No, we're not done yet." Foster had reached the weapon by now, her fingers flying over the strange controls. She had no idea how the device worked, but she was determined to figure it out. The alien leader, seeing her action, let out a low growl of frustration and moved toward her, intending to stop her. But before the alien could reach her, Jensen, his eyes burning with determination, stepped in front of him. His body was still weak from the earlier test, but the adrenaline surged through him. He raised his weapon and fired a warning shot. The blast hit the alien, sending him stumbling back. Though the alien was unharmed, the distraction was enough for Foster to continue her work. As the alien leader recoiled, Carter's voice cut through the chaos. "Foster, now." With a final press of the strange alien controls, Foster activated the weapon. There was a brilliant flash of light, and for a moment, the entire room was bathed in a blinding glow. Carter shielded his eyes, but he could feel the intense power surging through the air. The energy, once controlled by the aliens, now seemed to pulse under human command. The alien leader screamed in rage, his eyes flashing with fury. "You think you've won. You have no idea what you've unleashed." Carter's heart raced as the alien's words echoed in his mind. Whatever the weapon was, they had just activated it. But had they truly won? The surge of power felt like nothing they had ever experienced. It was raw, untamed, and it was theirs now. The ground beneath their feet rumbled. It was as if the ship itself was alive, reacting to the new force that had been released. The walls trembled, and the strange hum that filled the room shifted into a deep, menacing growl. It was clear the weapon's activation was only the beginning. "We've just made a dangerous enemy," Carter muttered, watching the alien leader retreat into the shadows, knowing that the real battle was far from over. The crew was ready, though. They had crossed a line, and now they had the power to fight back. It was time to show the aliens what humanity was truly capable of. Unleashing the fury, the air in the chamber crackled with a strange energy. Carter's pulse raced as the weapon continued to hum, its power swelling with every passing second. The room's walls vibrated as though the ship itself were reacting to the sudden shift in control. The alien leader, still reeling from the earlier blast, glared at Carter and his crew, his hands trembling with unspoken fury. The smug confidence he had exuded earlier was now replaced with a cold, calculating rage. "You fools," the alien leader hissed, his voice sharp and venomous. "You think you have control. You have no idea what you've done." Carter stood tall, his eyes never leaving the alien leader. "You're right. We don't fully understand what we've unleashed, but we're going to make sure we control it." Foster, standing beside the weapon, adjusted the controls once again. The strange symbols on the device flickered, almost as though it was communicating with her. She pressed another button, and a low rumble filled the air as the weapon's core pulsed once more. A surge of energy shot through the room, the alien technology now responding to her commands. The alien leader's eyes widened. "No, you cannot control it. It was never meant for you." But it was too late. The power was already theirs. Suddenly, the ship shook violently. The once sturdy walls groaned as though the entire structure was under strain. The light flickered, casting long shadows across the room. Carter's heart skipped a beat. The alien weapon was far more powerful than he had anticipated, and they were barely hanging on to control. "Hold on," Carter shouted. "Foster, do whatever you can to stabilize the energy." Foster nodded, her face focused with intense determination. She quickly adjusted the settings again, but the power surging from the weapon was growing uncontrollable. The ship was starting to respond in strange ways. The walls seemed to ripple, and the floor trembled as though the very foundation was buckling under the weight of the weapon's activation. Jensen, struggling to stay on his feet, was looking around nervously. "This is bad, Captain. I don't think the ship can handle this much longer." Carter took a deep breath. He knew the consequences of failing here would be catastrophic. If they couldn't regain control of the weapon and the ship, they would all be doomed. The alien leader had underestimated humanity's resolve, but now, it seemed as though they had inadvertently unleashed something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. "We need to move fast," Carter said, his voice low but filled with authority. "We can't let this power get out of control." Suddenly, the alien leader lunged forward with surprising speed, his alien form shimmering in the dim light. He reached for the weapon, but Foster was quicker. She pushed the controls, activating a protective barrier just in time to block the alien's advance. The alien recoiled, growling in frustration. "You think you can trap me with your primitive technology? You are nothing but insects." Carter clenched his fists. "You're wrong. You thought we were weak, but we've been underestimated before. This time, we're not backing down." With a sudden move, Carter rushed forward, pulling out his sidearm and aiming it at the alien leader. The blast hit the alien's armor, but it barely fazed him. The alien leader's eyes flared with energy, and he snarled in anger. "You've activated something far beyond your understanding," the alien hissed. "This ship will tear itself apart, and you will all perish with it." The ship's shaking intensified. It was clear now. The alien leader had known this weapon could never be controlled by anyone outside their species. Humanity was playing with fire, and the consequences of their actions were rapidly escalating. Carter realized the weapon's energy was not only destabilizing the ship, but also pulling the crew into the heart of an unknown force. It wasn't just a matter of surviving the aliens' attack. It was a race against time to prevent the destruction of everything they had worked so hard to build. "We need to deactivate the core now," Carter shouted to Foster. "I can't," Foster responded, her fingers flying across the controls. "It's beyond my understanding. The system is fighting back." Jensen, his voice strained with urgency, added, "If we don't shut it down, the entire ship will collapse." The alien leader grinned, his teeth flashing with a mixture of amusement and hatred. "Foolish humans, you have no idea what you've unleashed. This ship will become your grave." But just as the alien prepared to strike, Carter made a split-second decision. He rushed towards the weapon's core, his mind calculating the risks. With a fierce determination, he activated a manual override. The system hummed and groaned as it fought against his efforts, but Carter's grip on the controls was unwavering. "I don't care what you think," Carter muttered under his breath. "We're not going down without a fight." Suddenly, the ship's tremors stopped. The power of the alien weapon, which had been growing out of control, started to stabilize. The hum of the device turned from a frantic scream to a low, steady pulse. The ship was no longer shaking, and the walls stopped vibrating. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was silence. Foster, breathing heavily, looked at Carter in disbelief. "You did it." Carter didn't respond immediately. He was too focused on the alien leader, who was now staring at them in shock and fury. "You?" The alien leader growled, his voice filled with venom. "This is far from over. You cannot stop us. We will reclaim what is ours." Carter narrowed his eyes. "We'll see about that. You've underestimated us long enough." The alien leader was silenced by Carter's words, but the danger was far from over. Carter knew that this was only a temporary victory. The true battle was about to begin, and humanity was ready to fight. The final stand. The silence that followed felt surreal, almost like a calm before a storm. The ship, now eerily quiet, had stopped shaking. The weapon's energy had been stabilized, but Carter knew this was just a brief respite. The alien leader's fury was palpable, and they could sense that their victory was far from assured. Every member of the crew was on edge, knowing that the true battle had only just begun. The alien leader, still glaring at Carter, clenched his fists in frustration. "You may have momentarily subdued the weapon, but you cannot escape the inevitable," he snarled. "The Galactic Alliance will not tolerate your insolence. You will regret this." Carter's eyes never left the alien, his voice unwavering. "You've underestimated humanity for far too long. We don't back down, no matter what." Foster stepped forward, her face serious but resolute. "We've taken your ship, and we've taken your weapon. You're out of options." The alien leader's eyes flared with an otherworldly light, his form shimmering with suppressed power. "You think you've won. I will make sure you all suffer for your defiance." Carter knew it was time to end this. He nodded to Jensen, who had been monitoring the ship's external systems. "Jensen, we need to prepare for a final push. It's time to take this ship apart." Jensen nodded, his fingers dancing across the control panel as he began issuing commands. "Captain, the ship's defensive systems are still online, but I can disable them from here. We'll need to be fast." As Jensen worked, Carter turned to Foster. "How's the weapon? Is it stable enough to keep under control?" Foster hesitated but nodded. "For now. But I don't know how long it will stay like this. The system's still resisting." Carter's gaze hardened. "We don't need it much longer. Once we've disabled the ship's defenses, we make our move. Get ready." The crew moved quickly, a sense of urgency settling over them. They had the upper hand, but the alien leader was still a deadly threat. They knew they needed to act fast before the alien leader could retaliate. Outside, the stars twinkled peacefully in the vastness of space. The ship, once a symbol of the alien race's dominance, now seemed fragile, vulnerable. It was a stark contrast to the aggressive machine that had once been in full control. Carter's hand gripped the weapon's manual override once more, just in case the alien leader made a desperate move. Foster stepped back from the weapon's console, wiping sweat from her brow. "It's done. The weapon's energy output has stabilized." Carter gave a sharp nod. "Good. Jensen, disable their external defenses now. Let's end this." Jensen's fingers flew across the console, his voice tense. "Almost there. Just a few more seconds." The alien leader's eyes narrowed as he realized what was happening. He made a sudden, frantic move, but it was too late. With a final push of a button, Jensen disabled the ship's defensive systems. Carter turned to the crew. "This is it. We're going in." The crew sprinted toward the launch bay, the ship now open to the full threat of space. Carter knew this was their last chance to take down the alien leader before he could call reinforcements. As the doors to the launch bay opened, Carter and his crew filed into their spacecraft, a sense of finality settling over them. The alien leader, now trapped in the heart of his own vessel, had no way to escape. They had taken control, and they would not stop until humanity's strength was undeniable. Jensen powered up the engines, and the ship blasted off, hurtling toward the alien flagship. It was time to deliver the final blow. Inside the alien leader's chamber, he paced furiously, his mind racing. He had underestimated humanity, and now it seemed that he was paying the price. He would not go down without a fight. "You may have won this battle," the alien leader spat, "but the war is far from over. You think you can defeat the Galactic Alliance? You're just a speck in the cosmos." Carter's voice was cold, cutting through the alien's anger like a blade. "The war is over, alien. You've lost." With that, Carter and his crew launched their final strike. The spacecraft surged forward, a blaze of human fury and defiance. The alien flagship, once a symbol of the Galactic Alliance's might, now found itself on the receiving end of humanity's unstoppable wrath. As the alien ship began to crumble, the crew of the human vessel watched, their faces hard with determination, but filled with a sense of relief. The battle had been long, and the road ahead uncertain, but humanity had proven one undeniable truth. They were not to be underestimated. The alien leader's voice echoed one last time through the ship's corridors, a hollow promise of revenge. But it was too late. Humanity had already marked its place in the galaxy, and no force in the universe would ever make them bow again. And so, the galaxy would never forget the day humanity rose up against the greatest of threats and stood victorious.